Welcome back inside the Now Morning Show. TTUTA responds to the decision allowing migrant children to enter schools in September. We have with us this morning President of TTUTA, Martin Lumpkin. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, sir.
How are you doing this morning?
I am fine, thanks. Up early this morning.
And we're very grateful to have you up early this morning.
It's always an honor to be in this hallowed walls. Great institution, TTT.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Let me get on to the business one time. So earlier this week, we had a chat with the Minister of Education, and she would have mentioned the legislation is in place to allow the school permits so that migrant children, Venezuelan migrants in particular, will be allowed to enter schools from September. Not all, but we're going to, I think she said about 200 of them
roughly,
should be included in the system as a pilot program. How does TTUTA feel about this?
Okay, so firstly, let me say, fundamentally, TTUTA has no objection to having migrant children, specifically the Venezuelan migrants, receive schooling. We are Trinidad and Tobago, that is signatory to the United Nations Rights of the Child, which includes schooling, having education. So in that concept, we have no objection as well. And TTUTA always believes that children, no matter what your background, should be allowed schooling. And so we have no objection fundamentally. However, we believe that there must be certain basic resources and procedures and policies that are put in place, because it's not only going to affect the educators, the teachers, the local students, but also the migrant students, because you're talking about cultural differences, language differences, and we always think that the children, they're coming with nothing to provide to the system, but they have a wealth of background, knowledge, and cultural differences that can bring to the education system. However, if it's not implemented properly, then you're going to get frustration on all levels in the education system. So,
all right, let me start by asking then, do you think that the way that the Ministry of Education is approaching it now with doing a pilot program first, is that the correct way?
At this point in time, yes, we believe that it is the correct way to introduce it. And as far as we're aware, the Catholic Education Board of Management, CEBM, has been on the doorsteps waiting to have this done. They have been doing all the background. So we had the conversation with the Chief Executive Officer. I always say Chief Education Officer, but the Chief Executive Officer, Ms. Mongru.
Right.
And she gave us the assurance that they would have done the necessary background, put resources in place, training. They are seeking funding from both local and international bodies. We still do have some concerns. For example, school feeding.
Right.
The school lunches. More than likely, and we are saying more than likely, these children would require the school feeding program, breakfast and lunch. Would that resources be available to them? How would it affect and their dietary differences as well too?
Right.
Yeah. So we have been given the assurance by the Catholic Board. Ms. Mongru said that they did the necessary research. They would have consulted the principals of the schools who are willing to, and they have assured us that no local student will be misplaced or denied the opportunity by giving the migrant children an opportunity for education. Now, apart from humanitarian aspect, we see that if it is done properly as well, these children later in the upcoming years can make a contribution to the national development of Trinidad and Tobago. But more importantly as well, if we engage them in activities, build their self-confidence, have them contribute, it's more than likely, some will get through the cracks, but it's more than likely they will not end up in nefarious activities, end up in gangs, end up in, all sort of unlawful activities. It's not a guarantee, but it will reduce possibility and the probability of
All right,
such.
so we are in full support of it. You mentioned the concern about school feeding program, for example. I want to get more into the concerns that would affect the teachers directly, like the in-classroom concerns. Are there any?
So, for example, a number of our schools do not have the requisite number of furniture. So I can tell you as a principal, the last time we would have gotten was in the early 2000s. So you have furniture that is being let's say you can't reuse them.
They're destroyed. They're damaged, destroyed,
Right.
they put outside. I see them too.
Yeah.
I see classrooms of furniture outside on the side of the school in a back junkyard, and I've seen it in several schools.
Yeah.
So how do we begin to rectify that problem? Because that's not a problem that we just come about.
Well, the thing is that all schools should be outfitted with furniture adequately to provide for not only the students, but our teachers as well. Because we have instances of derelict furniture being recycled. I mean, we take it to the point of recycling to the extreme. Because I've seen where you have rusting desks. Sometimes it's pulling on the dress and the
School clothes, yeah.
clothes of the administrators and the educators as well too. So we need to have those basic resources put in the schools. So not only for the migrant children, so I'm making a plug that generally we need to have that.
Yeah.
Over the years, we've been asked, what are your emergency numbers? We've been given that to the ministry. However, we have not gotten back in return. I understand the Honorable Minister did say that they're in the process of procuring those, but that's one basic. Now, also, with this extreme heat, you need to have proper ventilation, especially if you're increasing the number of bodies within the classroom.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a number of we're not saying air condition, but like fans and ensuring that the windows are functional. Doors are functional as well too.
I need to ask this, right? As a principal, is that the responsibility of the ministry or of the administration of the school to be able to do things like fix windows and stuff like that?
It is the basic function of the Ministry of Education. However, as the leader in the plant, as the administrator, you tend to utilize other resources as well too. I've known some principals who pick up hammer and nail and get creative. However, within the recent past, the ministry has instructed administrators that they should not engage in minor repairs, because in the past they would have had some botched repairs, and it costs the ministry more. However, there's a downside to that. While waiting on the ministry to repair, then you have certain health and safety issues that will come up, right? And ministry always speaks about duty of care, and the administrators have a duty of care to those on the plant. So while you're waiting on the ministry to intervene, you have that health and safety issue looming above your head. So some administrators still go ahead and, as we say, take a chance to fix.
Six or one, half a dozen of the other, you know?
Yeah.
All right, so let's get back to the migrant children. When it comes to the teachers, the minister would have mentioned training for the teachers to be able to deal with the new students, to be able to deal with some of the language barriers and stuff like that. Has there been a response from your colleagues?
We haven't really reached out as yet. We are in the process of investigating which schools are going to be accepting the migrant children. So the Catholic board, so the Catholic schools are basically the schools that will be in the pilot project. So we have, from what I'm aware, Caratal RC, Lochmaben RC, my old school, Granville RC, they will be, they have been engaged in training. Caratal, I believe, yesterday. Granville is on I was given the date anyhow, but those training are ongoing. So you have training from the University of the West Indies and a regional body as well. I can't recall the name right now, but they have
because the UNHCF or something like that.
And there's a further body as well too. Now, we can give our administrators and teachers basic training However, there are some situations that may arise that they may not be prepared for. So it's something that they have to keep in the back of their mind. Now, one of the things, we have had migrant children from other countries within the system. It's just that these are children whose parents would have registered between, I believe, is May and June 2019, that they are allowing into the schools.
Okay.
But we've had that challenge, not in a large number. So you'd have had Chinese migrants, Nigerian migrants, and they coming into the system. And by and large, our teachers, our educators have fit in and tried their best.
Yeah.
But it has been challenging in terms of the language barrier, the cultural barrier. And within the cultural barrier, we have to be careful that these migrants are not treated in a way that we term bullying as such, because of the difference of what they bring to the table.
Completely understood. Now, one of the things that had to happen was the special permits granted, of course,
Yes.
By the Ministry of National Security.
Yes.
And so we had to change some legislation to be able
Yes.
to facilitate that.
Yes.
How do you guys feel about the changing of the legislation? Do you feel as though there's more legislation that needs to be adjusted when it comes to education?
Sure. So we are not discounting the legislation to allow the migrant children into the schools. We welcome that. But we believe there are far more important legislation that needs to be looked at. For example, for a number of years, there has been a proposed change to the Education Act, which speaks about the age of schooling, which presently is, the age of schooling is 5 years upward. This does not include the early childhood care and education children and the system. And there has been the proposal, the Honorable Minister did say that it is at the Attorney General's office presently. However, we feel it's there for an inordinate number of years, because it's years, it's there. We wrote to the Attorney General, who said that the legislation is being finalized and so. But while all of that is taking place, the ECCE sector is languishing. They're suffering because they are not recognized within the Education Act as school-age children. And there are a number of factors, a number of issues that impact on it as well.
Like
too.
what?
So, for example, tenure service for our teachers at the ECC centers. They are on contract,
Right.
and they should be in the education system. If we speak about seamless education from ECCE to tertiary, then you're supposed to be included ECCE. You can't be having them on contracts, and you're talking about a number of years, some of them 15 years on contract. So there's no tenure of service. And then in terms of the legality of the students as well too, whereby they are within the education system as well too. There are certain, legal implications of not being in there as well too. Yeah.
Interesting. All right, so we can check out that legislation and see how we can get some more information about the ECC aspect of it in particular. But Mr. Lumpkin, let me thank you very much for joining us this morning and for sharing your thoughts and TTUTA's thoughts as it relates to the migrant children entering schools in September. I think we look forward to the pilot program to see how it goes, and hopefully we can get some feedback from TTUTA and from the ministry and see how we match up the performance indicators.
Sure.
Yeah? All right, we take that quick break and come back with more on in our morning show. Stay tuned.
Our rising population needs sound education.